Everybody on staff always got praise and credit from Nick, and on-air credit. He always thanked us all. It was wonderful.
In 1959, Nick was working at WLAP Radio, which was sponsoring the Miss Lexington beauty pageant. One of the contestants in the pageant was his future wife, Nina.
They came down to the radio station, all these young girls came in, all of them gorgeous, of course, and then this knockout walked through the door, and I don't believe that I spoke coherently for about another 3 days, as I recall.
Nina won the contest, and Nick became her escort to events leading up to the Miss Kentucky pageant. 1 week before the big event, he popped the question.
I was very taken with this young lady, and I had the sense that she kind of liked me too. So, toward the end of the dinner, I said, "Would you please pass the butter over there, and will you marry me?"
And I said, "Here's the butter, and yes, I will." Now, I think I was a little taken with you, don't you?
It sounds to me like you are.
Yeah.
And that actually was the only proposal there ever was. We married 3 months later, and we have been married 39 years.
Once married, Nick and Nina wasted no time in starting a family. In 1960, Nina gave birth to their daughter Ada. George made his debut 1 year later, in May 1961.
The most important thing is family. It's very important that you support the family, both financially and emotionally, to the extent that it was possible for you to do that, to teach them, to be there every bloody day, you know.
One of the things we tried to instill in the kids were that you should be fair and truthful, and that you should do what you are supposed to do in life. Whether that's as a child you're being told to clean up your room, or whether it's, okay, now it's time to go to work.
The short-term jobs typical of broadcasting meant that Nick had to go where the work was. Nina and the kids had to go with him, moving from one city to the next.
We simply assumed that this was a family move. We never asked the kids if they wanted to do anything. We felt that that was not a decision for them, that was a decision for us.
The frequent moves had different effects on young George and Ada. George, a natural extrovert, adapted with ease. George and Ada learned early that a life in the spotlight had its downside. A local paper announced that Nick's show had been cancelled with a huge headline reading "Clooney canned." When Nick went to pick up George and Ada from school that day, he found both children in tears.
I think he learned a lot from that about the effect that his job could have on his children.
And I said, "It's pretty tough, right?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, every show goes off the air. Some of them may last 20 years, but they'll all be canceled." I said, "Now that's a reality that we all have to understand together." Well, from then on, I would hear these conversations with their little friends. "Boy, it must be great to have a dad who was just talking to Carol Channing. It was so much fun." Big deal. He's going to be fired in a couple of weeks anyway.
With Ada climbing the corporate ladder and George basking in the spotlight, the careers of the Clooney siblings could hardly be further apart. But Nick and Nina are equally proud of both their children.
Ada, from the time she started to read, she read all the time. She is very, very bright. Now then, she's back in school to finish getting her degree in accounting. I always knew George was going to be in show business. From the time he was very, very small, his personality was such that he was going to perform.
By the time George was 5, he and his sister Ada had already appeared with Mum and Dad on the Nick Clooney Show.
My dad had a variety show in Cincinnati, Ohio. And from the time I was about 5 years old, we did commercials, or we did skits on the show. So I was always kind of involved in acting, even though we thought of it as broadcasting at the time.
We were forced to work together. That is to say, we had a show that everybody had to work on in order to make the show work. And Nina came downtown to work with us.
Marsha, go ahead and mystify.
The kids worked on the show.
Ada wanted to pitch in, but she really wasn't into it in any great degree. She was much more studious, much more academic. George, on the other hand, positively reveled in it.
The contrast between George and his sister was apparent when they were growing up. George was more interested in entertaining than in studying.
Oh, George was always pulling jokes. I can remember the old science lab was upstairs above the 3rd grade elementary room, and one of their favorite things to do was to torment not only the elementary teacher, but the grade school kids as well. And they would dangle frogs out the window.